One of the things that's been percolating for me lately is this, where are we in the economy? I'm seeing a lot of talking heads on both sides. It's about to crash and burn, and we're all, second coming of Jesus or something, through to, it's all rosy and there's never going to be another recession, and everything in the middle. And so I thought, well, we need to approach this as kingdom thinkers, and that's going to require a slightly different, conversation to what is already happening in the marketplace. And so that's what I want to bring on this one. But again, if you've got questions about anything, then give us your phone number. We will call you and I will help you with those things. So I want to talk about the economic time clock. Okay, what does it mean, and how do we look at the economic time clock through the lenses of a believer? I kind of feel like every year, of course, we go through these seasons, right? We have a spring, we have an autumn, we have a winter, summer, and we go through, and they're all different things. And if you're in Melbourne, then you have those every day. But for most of us, we have those seasons in a year. But what's interesting, you could kind of lay that concept over the top of our economy and understand that our economy goes through those seasons. We have a time of economic summer, we have a time of economic autumn, we have a time of economic winter, time of economic spring. And if you don't quite know how to handle your business activities in each of those quadrants or each of those seasons, then you do run the risk of doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, which, by the way, is what most people do. Most people completely counterculture on the way things should be done, and then the herd mentality kicks in and they follow what everybody else is doing. So that's why we're going to be talking about it. Now, I want to also kind of put this in the framework of being a believer. This monetary system that you and I operate under, this economic system that we have, is not godly. Okay, this fractional reserve banking system that we have was never designed by God. He had a much better system for us as mankind to operate with, and the good news is not one generation ever stuck to it after God gave the instruction. So to understand God's model for economy and trade, you would have to go all the way back to Leviticus. So if you remember Leviticus, this is when God is talking to Moses on Mount Sinai and giving him all the instructions, not to, don't forsake holiness, how to run a family, and a whole bunch of other things. And then he gets to how to trade. So Leviticus 25 talks about how he wants us to do this thing called, commerce. And I'll just pick up on some points, and you, this may not be new to you, but it may be. So the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai saying, speak to the people of Israel. So this is the instruction for the new nation of Israel. He says, when you enter the land that I'm giving you, the land shall observe a Sabbath. 6 years you'll sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in their yield. But in the 7th year you shall be a Sabbath of complete rest of the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. And you shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap from the harvest. Okay? So basically, under God's economy, we kind of trade in 7-year cycles. We work in 7-year cycles. We work for 6 and then we take a year off. And that's important for us to understand. And then it goes on to say, you shall count off 7 weeks and years of years, 7 times 7 years, so that a period of 7 weeks of years give 49 years. So that's a hard way of saying trade in, you got a 7-year cycle, trade in 7 sevens. So 7 lots of 7 years, and then in the 49th year you finish. And it goes on to say, in the 50th year, sound a trumpet and have a big party, basically. Proclaim liberty throughout the year for all of its inhabitants. And then it goes on to say, you shall return every one of you to your property and every one of you to your family. Now the 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. You shall not sow or reap or take from the harvest. It's a jubilee. In this year you shall return, every one of you, says it again, to your property. When you make a sale to your neighbor or buy from your neighbor, you shall not cheat one another. So basically, God gave us a model to work in a 50-year cycle, and we could borrow and trade amongst ourselves, and you paid a higher price to borrow somebody's land the further out you were from the end of a 7-year cycle, because at the end of 7 years you cancelled all your debts and sent all your hired hands home in 50 years. So that was God's model. Okay. Now, by the way, if we had the Jubilee cycle operating on Earth, we would never have hyperinflation. We would never have the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. You know, we would never have interest rates and lending that would crippling people and so forth, because ultimately the debt clock would be put back to zero at the end of every 7 years. And then we would have a nation dependent on God, because every 7 years you can't produce, you have to eat down what you've stored. So then the next year you have to rely on God to show up to produce another crop for you, otherwise you're going to have another famine. So an amazing model, really, in the scheme of things, and we don't have that. We have a corrupt system that's, you know, controlled by the super elites, and you know, the masses never get ahead, you know, through bad training or bad life choices or whatever, a million different things, and so our job, I believe, okay, and I've said this before on this show, is to think Babylon, but, you know, think kingdom but operate in Babylon. We've got to be able to understand how this operates and take it into a Babylonian construct, which is the monetary system that we have. By the way, this is when you know God's good. He can work through a monetary, he gets glory and advances his kingdom in a monetary system that he didn't create and doesn't like. That's when you know you've got a good God, okay? He is more than happy to work with what is here to get himself some glory and help establish his kingdom and help it advance. Isaiah the prophet said, the government is on his shoulders and it's ever expanding. And that is true, and it's very, very true. And he's using what is available, and what is available is not good. That's when you know you've got a good dad. So, thank you so much for watching. By the way, you guys, why don't you do me a favor? Would you hit the share button on your device? If you share this out, then more people will see it, more people may stumble across it, and it will be better for me to have, you know, to achieve my assignment, and it'll help me have a greater impact. If you could share this, that would be amazing for me. And if you've got a question, put it in the comments and I will talk to you. All right, so how do we handle ourselves? How do we handle ourselves at different stages of the cycle, okay? Because, you know, in spring, we know we could look at this in farming. In spring, you're doing different activities to what you're doing in summer. You're doing different activities in farming in autumn and different ones in winter. You know, if you're sowing seeds during every season of the year, you won't actually produce 4 harvests, okay? You will actually just lose it because the frost will get to it or the temperature will get to it for whatever reason, okay? There's different activities at different seasons, and we're going to pull that apart and have a look at it now. If we go back in history a little bit, for those of you that have been in business pre-2007, then you all know, you would have seen a really stark contrast between pre-GFC and global financial crisis. And one of the things that scares me is the business owners I meet who have only been in business since 2012 or nearer, because you haven't had the luxury of seeing a massive meltdown. It makes you a better entrepreneur when you have been through one of those major recessions, okay? You know, here's a funny part of my story. I started my business coaching practice, okay? So I decided I'm going to launch a business coaching practice, and I went and did some training, and I came back, and 2 months later, the world has a meltdown. 2 months after I launched my business coaching practice, the world goes into chaos. And it's funny because everybody at the time said to me, I mean, you're going to really struggle because a business coach is a luxury item and business is so tough, they're going to cut, you know, you're going to lose. And I remember, I had a whole bunch of clients even in the first 2 months. In fact, I had them before I even was launched my business. I had clients lined up. And I literally, in my mind, when people were saying to me, it's a luxury and you're going to get cut, I'm like, no. Now, in this GFC, everyone needs a business coach. To me, it was like, you know, I don't choose to participate in that thinking. Like, to me, now everybody does. And we, you know, we rode out 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12 when it was really tough, but also a huge amount of opportunity. In fact, this is reminding me right now, and some of you guys may have even been, I run a series of seminars on the Gold Coast, Brisbane and Sunshine Coast called How to Find Opportunity in Crisis. And I hire a little room and fill it up with people. No charges, training them on do more marketing, get more customers, da 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 da. Some of the stuff that I'm going to be sharing you with on this live. And it was a very heavy time, but also a really good time because it helps you see what an economy looks like. And, you know, in the absence of war, the transfer of wealth happens in a recession, okay? You know, why is it that the richest people in the world, like Carlos Slim and those guys, why is it that they basically run in cycles, in 10 to 14-year recessions, and all they do is go shopping every time the world falls apart? And you should definitely do that. I went out and bought a bunch of real estate immediately after the GFC and bought houses at 80 cents in the dollar. So you don't seem as happy as I am by that, but I'll see if I get some happy faces up in this place. All right? So it's important that we understand. And if you've been through one of them, then you will be prepared for the next one. And you need to be prepared for the next one. So interestingly, we have just this week in Australia, the US actually a little while ago, we have just passed our stock market. The Australian Stock Exchange has just passed the high point of 2007. So we had a big high of 2007. Obviously, the world fell apart. I'll draw it your way. 2007, the world fell apart, and we've been climbing back ever since with blips on the radar, and we've just passed the high of 2007, which is absolutely amazing. All right, let's draw on here and let's look at some strategy. All right, so we'll put summer up here. Okay, I'll draw them all first. So summer, autumn, winter, spring. So in Australia from 2000 to 2007, we had a massive economic summer. You know, you couldn't not make money. Literally, if you were a tradie, you booked 73 jobs for the day and turned up to the most lucrative. And if you were trying to book a tradie to come to your house, you were lucky if one turned up. They never rang you. They just had so much opportunity. Like, you couldn't not make money, you know, back in that day. And so, you know, it was funny. Stocks were up, business was up, property prices were up, the sun was up, and everyone thought it was going to last forever. And what we do know about economic cycles is the good times never last forever. Well, economic summer doesn't. You could actually make an argument that every part of the cycle is good times if you choose to see it that way. But economic summer certainly doesn't last forever. All right. And so, you know, so during that time, you know, what are the activities that we need to make? Well, I'll come to summer. We'll go to summer first, and then we'll make our way around. So during summer, obviously, you know, the big thing to do is be banking cash, right? This is like, there is so much activity. Everybody's making money. The trickle-down effect from all the prosperity has taken place. Property prices are through the roof. The trickle-down effect of everybody having money, you know, is really big, and discretionary spending is through the roof. And they're all good things. In fact, if you watched TV back then, you would remember just before that, you know, the CommBank running all these ads for, you know, Equity Mate. Equity Mate was the big thing, and they were trying to get you to draw out of your homes and buy boats, and they were just trying to lend money to everybody. And so that's an indicator of economic summer. And you in your business need to be doing everything you can to bank cash. The other thing you need to do is stay liquid. And this is where a lot of people get it wrong. They're out buying assets and buying assets and buying assets through summer. And then what happens is at some point summer ends and they've got too many assets and not enough liquid cash to be able to get through this period of time. In summer, it's vital that when you make money, you find ways to cash out some of those deals. Okay, so let me give an example. If you bought 5 houses and you made money on all 5, sell 1 or 2 and stick the money in the bank. You've got liquid cash. Okay, you're going to need that to go through autumn and winter. So you've got to make sure that you're taking money and putting it away somewhere where you can access it. All right, like just to give you an idea, for me right now, I have been getting liquid for 3 to 4 years, just sitting on my hands, waiting and waiting and waiting, okay, for whenever I think it's going to go bang, which I don't think is going to happen soon. But just staying liquid so that when it goes bang and the world falls apart, I'm going shopping, okay? And that's important, that you always have that liquidity around you. You need to fight for profit every day, okay? Now, the reason why I say fight for profit is during summer, everybody thinks that, you know, all these expenses creep into their profit and loss. They start spending money because everything's going well. You know, they're taking more holidays. They've got this discretionary spending going on in the business. You know, all of a sudden it's big team lunches and all this sort of stuff, and parties and Christmas parties that are spending 3 times as much. No, 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 no. This is a time where you've got to fight for profit every day because you need that profit so you can stay liquid. Because the more liquid you are, the better the shopping gets at the other end, okay? And also at this point, you want to explode your team. Explode the team. You want to find every single person you can get hold of so that you can get as much output from economic summer as you can during that time, okay? Everybody that contribute to growing your business, you know, if they can fog a mirror, they've got a good attitude, fog a mirror and do the job, get them on. Get them in, and they will help you, you know, with the output so that more revenue, more profit, more liquid, all those sort of things, okay? But of course, economic summer ends. And what's funny about 2007 or 2008 was the market didn't see it coming, and it always ends. There are a few indicators, actually. Let me tell you about a couple of indicators that would let you know that economic summer is about to end. The first indicator is that banks start to lend more than 100% of the value of a home. So if you look at 2005, 6, and 7, you could go to the bank and borrow 110% of the value of a home. They would lend you more than the value of the home. So basically, you didn't need to have a deposit. You could borrow enough money to buy the house 100%, no money down, and the legals to buy it, and the furniture to go inside of it, and then you could walk straight into a brand new home. The problem is that all the bank's doing at that point is being full-on greedy, okay? Because we have recourse lending in Australia, which means you can't get away with not paying your mortgage. They'll happily lend it because it's a burden for you for the rest of time. Not like America, right, where you have non-recourse lending, where literally you can, if you can't pay your mortgage, you post your keys back and they'll come and get the house. One of the other indicators is you'll get a whole bunch of people running seminars around the country doing no money down property deals because the property speculators, the white shoe brigade, are out ripping people off, charging absolute retail for houses, right? So when you see a seminar, no money down, run. Everybody that I know that did no money down real estate deals in 2008 and 9 had no money left, okay? So be super careful about those people. All right, so then it melts down. What happens in autumn? Well, we cut. Anything unnecessary. We cut. Cannot afford to be carrying any excess through this period of time. All right, all those subscriptions you signed up to, all those extra staff dinners, all those parties that you're going to, cut. Okay, you basically just sit down with your team and you say, sorry guys, you know, if you want to keep your jobs, then all the luxuries are out of here. And most people would rather have their job than a barbecue with their workmates. So you just cut. You want to systemize the business if you haven't done it before, because by systemizing you can be more efficient. You can have the same output with less team members, okay? You want to be lean. You want to negotiate with your suppliers, of course, okay? You sit down with all your suppliers and you say, guys, it's tough out there. I need better rates. I need more margin. You only need little bits of all your suppliers and that will add up to enough, to keep the wheels in motion. So you negotiate with your suppliers, call them to the table. By the way, if you've paid them on time, well for the whole of summer, you've got the right to sit down and say, hey guys, I need a better deal from you. And then when all this thing fixes, I'll go back to paying you really well and that in time, but I need some leniency from you guys. And then you may need to negotiate with your customers, okay? So if you've got a product that customers would be leaving, then you probably need to think about, some financing options or changing the payment structure. If you normally charge a client $50,000 for your product or service, then find a way at that time to charge them, 10 grand a month for 5 months, whatever. You may actually have to come up with some creative ways to get people to continually buy from you. The good days, you might have been able to do that, but you won't have that luxury over time. All right. Then we come to winter. Winter is when the start of the really exciting time turns up, okay? Winter is when you rent new premises. Now, why do I say that? You'll be thinking there's no money around. Well, there is, because you were liquid at the end of summer, because you didn't do what everybody else does and try and ride it to the very, very end, okay? You stayed liquid. And this is where your liquidity comes in, because you're going to start to pounce when other people cannot, right? So this is where we're going to rent new premises. So you can get rents in winter. You can get twice the size premises for the same amount of money, or go somewhere else and halve your rent for the same size, whatever. You can do amazing rental deals in winter because people are defaulting all over the place. Heaps of places are empty. Landlords will rather take some money than no money, and so you can normally do a huge deal there. Obviously, this is where you would start to build and get new equipment. All right, because everybody else is fire sailing theirs, or the insolvency mobs are putting them through the auction sites. Right, this is when you can, if you've got a machine that can, make 10 widgets an hour, here's your opportunity to buy one that can do 100 and build that capacity in your business. But you can only do this because you're liquid, because you listen to me in these times. All right. So now also, this is also when we're gonna employ key staff, and I call them key staff because in summer is when you'll take anybody, everybody. This is where the expensive team come in. Okay, the lawyers, the accountants, the estimators. The 100,000 plus a year employees right now will take 80, okay, or 70 or whatever, 93, which is better than 112, right? They're the decisions you can make, and you employ them now because they've been laid off and they don't have the work. So now you can get their IP and their skill set for 80 cents in the dollar, for example, and you can only do that because you're liquid. You also may consider doing an acquisition at this time, buying your competitors. I was working with a glazing business on the Gold Coast all the way through that period of time, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. Took them from 800 grand to 4 mil. They were in construction on the Gold Coast in a recession, and they were 5 times the size. And we did that. Basically, they were liquid. They were very, very smart. They had external money that they brought in also to be, even more liquid. And they were basically living on the auction sites. Oh, there's another glazing company gone under. We'll buy all their trucks. There's another glazing business gone under. We'll buy all their frames. We'll get all their team. Like they just exploded through that time. But also, I worked with other businesses around that time who, their competitors were going out of business. So they just called them and helped them walk through that period of calling the competitors and saying, hey, you're about to go under. How about I, make a play for your business? And they would go in there and buy a business at maybe half the price of what it would have been, or even less, because people were sick of it. They didn't want to be in business anymore. They were about to go broke, so any money was better than no money. And we were going in there and we were saying, listen, let's buy your business and we'll employ your key team and we'll give you a job so you don't go bankrupt or whatever. In some cases, we would find out that a competitor has already gone into liquidation, call the receiver and say, hey, can we buy the database and the phone number for, however much money, and then drive all that business into their business. It's the time when you actually get to make very strategic moves. What you really need to watch here is aged receivables, because this is where they blow out. This is where you've built up some credit with some people and they let you down. This is where, you put them on account to get their work and all of a sudden they've gone out of business, or they have no intention, or they drag you out. You have to be super careful, because a lot of businesses that are looking to change suppliers at this stage is because they've burnt every other supplier by not paying them, and so they want to move to you. Now, you're happy to pick up the work, but not if you're not going to get paid. So you really need to be vetting your customers who you give credit to really, really tightly in winter. By the way, I'm giving you some good stuff here. You should be giving me some comments in the comments below about the stuff that's popping, to you, okay? What's the stuff that's like, the little thing that's in your mind from what I've said? Put it into comments. I want to see it. I can see it. I can see the oxygen here, all right? Good. All right. So when it comes to spring, what does a farmer do in spring? They start investing in the ground. They're planting, they're sowing, okay? So in spring here is when we are going to play for a bigger market share. Okay, that's terrible writing, but I've said it, so it should work. This is when you really need to consider buying customers at a faster and faster rate. And then if you want to launch new products, that would be a good time to do it, because you've been through the lean months of winter and we're heading into spring. So think about this. If between 2000 and 2007 your business had a 13% market share, then spring is the time that you sit down and go, okay, I want to take my market share from 13% to 17%, or 19, or 21, or whatever, from 1% to 2%, or 3% to 5%. Spring is when you start to think about your market share, because If your market share is double here, then you get to milk the increased market share for all the way through the latter part of spring, all the way through summer before it goes bad again. Here's what most people do. Most people won't start making investments in their business. So all the stuff I've told you to do in winter and spring, most people won't be making that those decisions to invest because they're too scared. They'll be reading the newspaper, which is telling them it's all bad, it's all bad, it's all bad, because that's how you sell papers and advertising. So most people will wait until halfway through summer before they go, this is a good economic climate. So then they'll start investing, but they only get a short period of time to milk those investments. Whereas you start making them back here because you were liquid all the way through here, life gets really, really good. So it's counterculture though, because most people are tight-fisted, okay? You know, they're waiting for absolute evidence that summer is here, but by the time you have absolute evidence, it's probably nearly over. You've got to back yourself to make these decisions earlier, and it's much easier if you're liquid. And I'm not suggesting you need millions of dollars. Everybody's different on what liquid means. But when you've only got debt, then you know you've just got to service that. And if business drops and your property prices drop and you've got negative equity, you know, and maybe you've got some loans and the bank call them in, you know, life gets really hard. Whereas if you've got excess capital, you win. Let me tell you a funny story. So, you know, September 2007, Black Friday, the whole thing falls over. 2008, Lehman Brothers and those guys go under, and it's a disaster. On December 26 of the year of the recession, so Boxing Day, David Jones had a sale. Did you know that? Maybe you probably did. And I don't know if you saw the footage online, but there were thousands and tens of thousands of people waiting all around the country for those doors to open so they could race inside David Jones like hooligans so they could get 50% off a new pair of shoes and a jumper. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, except, do you know the stock market had a 50% off sale too at the same time? 50% off all stocks. You could get Rio Tinto for 50%, BHP for 50%. You could get blue chip stocks at 50 cents in the dollar. Did anybody buy them? Hardly anybody. But everybody needed a new pair of shoes. Everybody needed a new jumper. We all went for the stuff, and nobody went for the transfer of wealth. Listen, we've got to stop having these silly seminars about the transfer of wealth. If we're not going to practically play the cycle of this Babylonian culture to be part of it, to make the most of it. And by the way, that's you and I's job. If we're called to business, we're called to be part of the transfer of wealth. Our job is to be part of the system, to make the most of it, to make the cash, and to give it away and fund key projects. Far out, I'm preaching up in this place.